Hi, welcome to Mindful Movement, and we're going to be working today with the first chakra. Now chakra is, in Sanskrit terms, basically it means wheel, and we have points throughout the torso up to the top of the head where chakras are based. Now these are energy systems. And basically how they work is they spin, and when they spin that means the body's working in a good functional movement, but sometimes these chakras get blocked, which is why we use movement, breath, meditation to help these chakras stay nice and healthy. Now we're going to be working with the Muladhara chakra, which is the base chakra, and that's based around the pelvic floor. Now we can also work with our Mula Bandha as well, which is an energy lock, and the way we switch on the energy lock is like we feel like we're stopping ourselves going to the toilet for a wee, so it's like lifting that pelvic floor up, squeezing to stop anything coming out. And we can use that energy lock throughout our practice of yoga, and that keeps all that energy within. Now Muladhara is our place for Apana, which means elimination, getting rid of negative energy, things like that. So if you want to get rid of negative energy throughout your practice, don't switch on the lock of the bandha. But if you want to keep good energy in, hold that bandha in. So Muladhara stands for stability, grounding, support, rooting. So when we're working with yoga, we find our support from our hands, our feet, our sit bones. And when we use these parts of the body, we need to be thinking about as finding that support to the earth. And we bring out of the earth all that positive stuff, and we release into the earth all the negative stuff. So the Muladhara also has a place for our hormone, adrenaline gland, where the hormone adrenaline comes from. So it's our flight and fight hormone. So if ever we're in situations, our adrenaline kicks in and it gets us out of situations that could be quite frightening. So that gland sits around that area. Our spine is where our nervous system sits, so we need to have these vortexes, these chakras nice and clear to help us go through life in a good functional way. So we're going to work with this chakra throughout the whole of the class, and if you feel like you are unfocused, you're a bit fidgety, a bit lethargic, probably feeling a little bit vulnerable or needy, that means this chakra is a little bit blocked. So this practice will really help. So we're going to start our practice now with a breathing exercise. So come down onto a seat, sit bones either on the mat or sitting on one of the flat blocks if you wish, either in cross-leg position or have your feet out in front. If you want to sit up against something, feel free to do so. Or if you feel strong enough through your back to hold your body in this position for a few breaths, then just come into that seated cross-leg position. Okay, take a roll of the shoulders up towards the ears, back down towards the hips. Grow nice and tall through the spine. Take a close of the eyes, and we're going to take a couple of breaths here. We'll be counting in for 4 and out for 4. Okay, so take a nice long deep breath in. Long sigh out through the mouth. Then try and just use that nose for your breath, closing the mouth if you can. Breathe in for 4 through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. 2, 3, 4. In for 4. 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. 2, 3, 4. In for 4. 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. 2, 3, 4. Keep those breath counts. Keep nice and grounded into the sit bones. Keep the spines tall to create space for that air to come up and down that spine. Awareness as you breathe in, let that air travel up to the crown of the head, And as you breathe out, feel that exhale and that air travel back towards that lower part of the spine. Keep those counts for 4 on the inhale and the counts out for 4 on your exhale. Keep following that breath. Have the awareness of the colour red at the base of the spine. This is the colour that relates to that Muladhara chakra, that root chakra. Keep those breaths coming. Keep those counts coming. Keep those spines tall, shoulders relaxed. Hands either on top of the thighs or wherever you feel most comfortable. Eyes are closed. Focus is inwards. Still counting those breaths in and out for 4. The next time you take that breath out, open the eyes. Take a tuck of the chin in towards the chest, stretching through the back of the neck. Then send that chin up towards the ceiling, stretching through the front of the neck, all through that throat. Then bring that chin back to centre. Take a rotation of the cervical spine to one direction. Bring it back through centre. Take it over to the other side. Bringing your head back into centre. Bring one ear to one shoulder, stretching down the side of the neck, lateral flexion of that cervical spine. Bring that head back into the middle and then take that head over to the other side. All the time feeling stable on the floor, on those sit bones, rooted through into that earth, taking that energy from the earth that you need and releasing any negative energy, what you don't. Come on then to the hands and knees. Bring the heel of the hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips. And we're just going to work pelvic tilts here so the shoulders stay still, tops of the feet flat. So we're moving the pelvis in and out of tilts, flexion and extension. So feel like you're tucking that tailbone down and you're shortening that space in between the ribs and the hips. The belly draws back. See whether you can get that sensation of holding on to not allowing yourself to go to the toilet, lifting that pelvic floor. And then take it to the opposite direction. Let those hip bones start to drop and the tailbone start to lift. So we go into what we call an anterior tilt. So that back arches slightly, but remember we're not moving the shoulders here. We're not lifting the head. Just separating the lower part of the spine to the upper. Then tuck that tailbone down again. Feel that belly draw back towards the spine. The ribs and hips draw towards each other. And then take it back in the opposite direction. Lifting that tailbone up. Letting that belly drop. Letting those hip bones drop down towards the mat. And take it back into the opposite direction. So as that tailbone tucks, this is taking ourselves into a posterior tilt. So posterior is when the tailbone's tucked down. And anterior is when you lift that tailbone up. So just move in and out of those two places a few more times with a little more fluidity now, rather than holding in one place or the other. Shoulders are nice and stable. And just think of that colour red at the base of the spine near the pelvic floor. As you move it and lift in one direction and then tuck under and point that tailbone down towards the mat. So this spinal articulation of the lower part of the back is disassociation from the lower to the upper part of the spine. So just do a couple more of these pelvic tilts so you can get an idea of where those hips are in space. As the hip bones drop down, the tailbone lifts, anterior tilt. As the tailbone tucks under and the middle part of the belly pushes back, we go to posterior tilt. Then bring it to that space in the middle, that tabletop position. Hold it there for a breath. Neutral spine. Then keep in that neutral position, step both feet back to a plank and hold it in plank for a couple of breaths. Now, having that neutral pelvis, see whether you can tip that tailbone down slightly. So again, squeeze those ribs and hips towards each other. And then take that lower back into an arch as though you're lifting that tailbone up high. So we arch that lower back, lift that bum slightly. Then pelvic tilt again, tuck that tailbone down. Feel like that tailbone's a hook, hooking into the floor. And then again, lift that tailbone up to arch the back. Then bring it back to a neutral space. And then start to paddle the feet as we start to lift up with those hips into our first downward facing dog. Taking the gaze back towards the toes. Hands shoulder width apart, feet hip width apart. Maybe move those hips a little from side to side, just to get that feeling of softness through that pelvis as we've been working it quite strong for those first couple of moments. Then if you're happy to bring those heels to stillness, and we're going to try and do a few pelvic tilts in this position. So just soften the knees slightly. Feel like you tuck that tailbone down. So again, ribs and hips draw towards each other, and we take a slight arch through that back. So it's a rounding through the lower spine. And then take it into the other direction. Feel like you're lifting that tailbone up high and you're spreading the ribs and hips slightly away from each other. And it feels like those hip bones are starting to drop down to the floor. Take it back in the opposite direction. Remember, the shoulders stay where they are. They don't move at all. We're just disassociating the bottom part of the spine from the top. Then lift that tailbone again. Think of that colour red as you raise those hips up towards the ceiling, tailbone up towards the ceiling. One more time, tucking in and rounding through that lower back. Bend the knees if you need to. And then straightening and then lifting the tailbone up high. All the time finding that stability and grounding through the feet and the hands. Bring it back to a neutral space. Start to walk those feet towards the front of the mat, keeping the hips high. And as you get those feet underneath the shoulders, bending the knees as much as you need to, bring the hands onto the top of the thighs, lift up the chest, and just bring yourself into like a seated position. So the weight should be in the heels, feather-like touch through the toes. We've got a nice long spine, neutral place, and we're going to take those pelvic tilts again. Feel the grounding into the feet first. Then start to hook that tailbone down and roll through that lower back, trying to push the pubic bone forward. Then take it into the opposite direction, lifting the tailbone, dropping those hip bones forward towards those thighs. And again, take that hook of the tailbone, going from one place to another. Posterior tilt as the tailbone tucks under. Anterior tilt as you lift that tailbone up and the belly drops and those hip bones drop. Again, you can see my shoulders aren't moving. It's all happening in my lower spine. And the more we can do these pelvic tilts, the stronger you will get through that lower part of the back. And the more you'll understand where your body is in space. So posterior tilt when the tailbone tucks, anterior tilt when the tailbone lifts. And then find that space in between, that happy space in the center. Release the hands from the thighs and just raise the arms up towards the ears without arching that back, without tilting those hips, just keeping it in that nice, strong, in-between space. Hold it here for just one more breath. Then straighten up through the legs, raise the hands to the ceiling. Just take a back bend here, lifting the chest, squeezing the shoulder blades down to the hips. Bring the hands to the chest, bring the hands back to the hips. Bring your right hand onto the belly, your left hand onto the lower back. Just have a little space between the feet and just soften the knees. So taking those anterior and posterior tilts in standing position. So when I take the tuck of the tailbone, I'm going to feel like my left hand is pushing down to the floor and my belly feels like someone's pushing me in from the front, and that right hand lifts. As I take it into an anterior tilt, I feel that my left hand lifts and my right hand drops. And find those two spaces. Tailbone tucks down, belly draws back. And again, tuck that that pubic bone down and lift that tailbone. All the time keeping the shoulders in the same space. Just keeping that disassociation with the bottom to the top of the spine. Working in and out of those two places. So then when we ask you to go to neutral, you'll find that space in the middle. Hold it in that neutral space. Bring your hands down by the side of the body. Breathe in, raise the hands up towards the ceiling. Bring the palms together. Try not to flare the ribs. Try not to arch or tuck the tailbone. Then as you breathe out, bring the hands swan dive down, fold from the hips all the way down to the floor. Bring the hands to the floor or to wherever they reach. Let the head go. Breath in, come up to a half lift. Place the hands on the shins. Straighten the back. Roll the shoulders back to the hips. Then bring those hands back down to the mat. Bend the knees if you need to. Step your right foot back to the back of the mat. Step your left foot back to the back of the mat. Hold it in plank for a couple of breaths. So again, the hands of the feet are the stable parts of the body, pushing into that earth, creating that energy from the floor coming up into the shoulders. So as you push into those hands, those shoulders, lift away from the mat a little more. The chest pushes into that cavity space between the shoulder blades. Try and squeeze those ribs and hips towards each other and tuck that tailbone down. Take it into a pelvic tilt in the opposite way. Feel like you're arching that lower back. And again, tuck that tailbone under. Ribs and hips towards each other. Then find that happy space in between. Start to lift the hips, maybe paddle the feet if you need to. Finding your way back into downward facing dog. Then bring those feet to stillness. Raise up with your right leg. Lift it up towards the ceiling. Bend the knee. Turn the hips to the right. Rotate the ankle of that right foot in one direction. Then rotate the ankle in the opposite direction. All the time trying to encourage that left heel a little closer to the mat. Shoulders neutral to that short edge. Try not to dump into that shoulder on that left side. Try and keep nice and neutral. Bring that knee then into the chest and squeeze that knee nice and tight. Try and curl through the spine. Hold it there for a couple of breaths. Trying to feel the push of that left foot into the mat, the push of the hands into the mat. One more breath here. Then raise that right leg again back up towards the ceiling. Bend that knee. Stack that hip. Roll it over to that right side. Neutral shoulders to the front edge. Realign the hips. Bring the right foot down to meet the left. Come onto the knees. Step the right foot in between the hands to find a low lunge. So push the top of the back foot into the mat. Raise the hands up towards the ceiling. Bring the hands together at the top. Try to encourage the ribs and hips towards each other. Think about that tilt of the pelvis. Hook that bum under slightly, but try not to get that full expression. That left thigh will stop you from going too far because we're stretching the left hip flexor and we're stretching through the quad on that left side. Arms lifted nice and high. Take a hold then of your left wrist with your right hand and reach over with the hands towards the right side of the room. stabilizing the body into the floor by pushing into the feet, opening through that left rib cage. So we're feeling that stretch down the left side. And then work your way forward towards the front of the room with the hands. Then bring those hands to reach forward, letting go of that left wrist, holding it here, stabilizing through the core, trying to squeeze the ribs and hips towards each other. Try not to rest onto that right thigh. One more breath here. Then bring the hands down to either side of that right foot. Step the right knee back to meet the left. Just rock the hips a little from side to side. Just soften through that pelvis. We've worked that pelvis really hard by contracting the muscles at the front and the back of that pelvis. Then tuck the toes under, find plank position. Hold it in plank for a couple of breaths. Do a couple of pelvic tilts, so squeeze the ribs and hips together, tuck that tailbone down. Then take the arch into that lower back, all the time shoulders not moving. And think of that colour red at that pelvic floor as you're tilting in and out of anterior and posterior tilt. Then bring it back to neutral, lift the hips, try and keep that neutral space. You can paddle the feet if you wish, or keep those feet nice and grounded into the mat. Then start to walk those feet towards the front of the mat, bringing ourselves into that chair position. So feet under the hips, take a bend into the knees, bring the hands onto the top of those thighs and work those pelvic tilts again. So tuck that tailbone down, draw that belly back, ribs and hips squeeze together. Then take it into the opposite direction, lifting the bum, arching the lower back, shoulders stay neutral. And again, tuck that bum under, draw that belly back. And take it back into that anterior tilt with the tailbone lifted. 2 more times in this chair position. All the time feeling that stability and support into the floor, into that earth. Drawing the positivity of earth up and into the body. And releasing out any negative energy that you feel. Bring it to a neutral space. Hold it in neutral. Raise the arms up towards the ceiling. Hold it here for a couple of breaths. Then reach up with the hands. Keep that neutral spine. Maybe take a little back bend. Flare through the ribs. Bring it back to neutral. And then swan dive down. Bending from the hips. Releasing those hands all the way to the floor. And let go of that head. Nod and shake the head. Then step back to a plank position. Keep the hips in a nice long line. Then lift the hips up towards the ceiling. Squeeze the heels back. Ready to take that same movement on the opposite side. So raise up that left leg this time. Bend the knee, stack the hips, turn the hips to the left. Rotate the ankle of that left foot in one direction. Try not to collapse into that shoulder on the right side. Encouraging that right heel down towards the floor. Take that twist of the ankle in the opposite direction. Then realign those hips, bring the knee to the chest and squeeze that knee in. Try and tuck that tailbone down, round through the back. Hold it here for one more breath. Then raise that leg again back up to the ceiling. Take a bend into the knee, a stack of the hips. Realign those hips. Come down onto the knees and step your left foot through. Keeping the back knee grounded, sink the hips, raise the arms up towards the ceiling to find that low lunge. This time take the left hand around the right wrist. And then start to lateral flex that body over to the left side. Keep pushing into the sole of the left foot, the top of the back foot. Try and keep the chest nice and open, the tailbone tucked. Ribs trying not to flare. Space between those ribs on the right side, and breathe into that space. Open up through that chest a little more. Then reach down and forward with those hands, bringing them to that 45-degree angle. Reaching forward with the hands, relaxing back with the shoulders. Holding it here just for another couple of breaths. Then release those hands down either side of that left foot. Bring that left knee back to meet the right. Take a little rock of those hips from side to side. And then step your feet back to a plank position. Do a few pelvic tilts here. Tuck under, round that lower back. And then lift that tailbone up, arch into that lower back. Again, take that pelvic tilt under, ribs and hips squeeze. And then lift that tailbone up. Arch that lower back. Come back to a center space. Raise the hips up to the ceiling, back to our down dog. Have a little nod and shake of the heads. Maybe a little paddle through those feet. Then bring those heels to stillness. Push those chests back. Come back forward to a plank position. Drop down the knees. See whether you can untuck the toes, keep the tailbone lifted. Bend the elbows, just bringing the chest to the floor, the chin to the floor. Then roll through and up, lift into a little baby cobra. Squeeze the shoulders back, ground into the floor and the earth with the hips. Trying to push that tailbone down. Then release that chest back to the floor, tuck the toes under, bring those chests back towards those thighs. Push into those hands and feet, lift up the hips, squeeze the heels back. Encourage the heels towards the floor if they'll reach. Then coming down onto the knees, we're going to take a wide leg lunge. So bring your right foot to the edge of the mat. Tuck the back toes under of the left foot and let the left toes come to the left side of the mat. Reach the left hand forward. Raise the hand up of the right towards the ceiling. Just open that chest out to the side. Then try and let that right knee come out a little further and open the chest up towards the ceiling a little further by sending that right hand towards the left side of the mat. Staying on the toes of the back foot, pushing that left heel back, just sinking into that left hip. All the time thinking about that stability through the pelvis, that colour red, trying to release any tension in the lower back if you need to tuck that tailbone down a little more. One more breath here. Then bring that right hand back, walk that right foot back into the middle. Drop that back knee and tuck those back toes. Bring the right knee back to meet the left. Rock those hips a little from side to side. Taking the same on the left side, so step your left foot to the outside of the left hand, tuck your back toes under of the right leg, step that right foot out to the side. So then we need to bring that right hand a little further forward. We raise up this time with the left hand, we gaze up towards that thumb of the left hand if we can, if the neck's happy. Then just push that left knee out a little further to the left. Keep grounded through that left foot. Stabilise to the floor. Then open that chest up maybe a little more, sending that left hand towards the right side of the mat. Stabilising into your right hand. Feel and draw any energy up from the earth that you feel you'll be beneficial from. and release any negative energy as you breathe out. Send it down into that floor. Widen and open that chest a little further to the ceiling. One more breath here. Then bring that left hand down. Walk that left foot back into the centre. Drop that right knee back to the mat. Bring the left knee back to join the right. Rock those hips a little from side to side. Bring it to a tabletop position, tops of the feet flat on the floor. Take a couple of pelvic tilts. Shoulders stay where they are. Breath in. Lift up the tailbone. Let the hip bones drop down, the belly drop down. Take a breath out and tuck that tailbone under. And try and hook it down to the floor and squeeze those ribs and hips together. Take it through some fluid movements of those tilts. In and out of posterior and anterior tilting. Working the strength of the muscles around that pelvis, particularly in that lower back and through those transverse abdominal muscles down the front of those bellies, at the sides of those bellies. Keep that going a few more times. And then when you've done a couple of more, find that space in that neutral place. Step both feet back to a plank. Start to walk those hands back towards the back of the mat. Bending the knees as much as you need to bring those hands back. Bring the hands then onto the knees and bring yourself into that chair position. So tuck that tailbone down, ribs and hips come a little closer towards each other, shoulders don't move. And then take it to the opposite way. 2 more times in both directions. Tuck under and lift. 1 more time, tuck under and lift. Find that neutral space. Raise the arms to the ears. Keep that neutral pelvis. Sink into the hips a little further. Ground into the heels, feather-like touch through the toes. Find that stability in the feet. Stability in the core centre. Knowing you're stronger than you think. Knowing you can and you will. Bring the hands to the chest, straighten up through the legs. Reach the hands up towards the ceiling. Then swan dive down, folding from those hips. Bringing those hands down to wherever they reach. Let the head hang. Breath in, lift up the head, half fold. Then start to walk the hands back so you're in your downward facing dog position for 1 more breath. Then walk the feet into the centre. And then bring the heels and sit bones towards each other. So coming onto your toes, find a balancing point here. Bring the hands then onto the thighs if you feel happy to do so. Feel that tuck of the tailbone under, the ribs and the hips drawing towards each other. Nice and tall through the spine. Lifting up through the crown, creating that space for that energy to flow from the base of the spine, the Muladhara Chakra, all the way up to the crown of the head, passing the other 6 chakras, helping them feel like they can move and spin nice and equally to find that equilibrium of the body. 1 more breath here. Then release the hands to the floor, bring the feet out in front of you. Just give those legs a little paddle, a little shake. Then we're going to do a forward fold from here. So remove the flesh from under the sit bones, bring the toes back to the shins, roll the shoulders back, taking a couple of flows of forward folds. Breath in, raise the hands to the ceiling. Feel grounded through the sit bones, but long through the arms. Breath out, start to fold, bringing the hands forward. Bring your breath in, bring the hands back into the chest, raise them back up towards the ceiling. Breath out, fold over those legs. And again, bring those hands back in on the in-breath and up to the ceiling. And your breath out, fold towards those legs. One more time, bring those hands into the chest, up towards the ceiling. And then fold, and this time just bring the hands to the floor, let the body fold over that legs nice and passively, letting the head hang, letting that back curl, shoulders relax, not holding anything to create any tension in the shoulders. That lower spine feeling stretched through those pelvic tilts, just to let them relax. Then walk the hands back up to the body. Excuse me. Bring the feet in. Let the knees drop out to the sides. And just feel that tailbone tuck under to allow those knees to drop out. The feet can either be nice and close into the bum, or if you're happier to have those feet more in a diamond shape, whatever works for you. The aim is to stay nice and tall, to let that energy pass from the base of the spine to the crown of the head on the inhale, and then go back down towards the base of the spine on the exhale. Making awareness of that breath as it moves up and down that spinal column, calming the nervous system, taking us out of that flight and fight mode. Maybe close the eyes. Maybe take the count of the breath in for 4 and out for 4. Breathing in deeply and breathing out completely. Feel yourself rooted into the floor. Relax through the shoulders, tall through the neck. Feeling the openness on the inside of those thighs. Another couple of breaths here. Then when you're ready, slowly making your way down onto the floor, onto your backs, either energetically or passively. Just bringing the knees into the chest, just give those knees a squeeze. But feel like you can send that tailbone down to the mat. So the lower spine is grounded, maybe a little space between the mid-spine and the mat, but the shoulders are plugged into the floor, so the upper spine on the thoracic between the shoulders is grounded, but maybe a little space between the cervical spine around the neck. Have a little rock of those legs from side to side, just massage that spine. Take some circles with the knees in one direction, get into that lower part of the back that we've been working quite hard with those pelvic tilts. Take those knees to the opposite side. Then squeeze those knees again back in towards the chest. Hold them nice and tight. Keep all of the spine as much in contact to the floor as you can. Then bring the feet to the mat. Release the legs out long to the ends of the mat. Let them drop out to the sides. Bring the hands down by the sides of the body. Let the fingers curl, palms face up. Push into the heels, tuck the tailbone down by lifting the hips away. Take the arch out of the lower spine, release that bum back to the floor. Give those hips a little rock. Take a turn of the head in one direction. Bring it back through center over to the opposite side. Back into the middle. Push those shoulder blades down. Create some space at the front of the body. Scan from the feet to the top of the head, just checking that everything feels relaxed. You're not holding any muscles, not holding any tension in any part of the body. Close the eyes. Focus inwardly. Bring the attention to that space of that Muladhara chakra, the lower part of the body, that pelvic floor, and thinking about the colour red. Noticing yourself being supported, the parts of the body that are touching the earth. Breathe in that energetic feeling, positive thoughts. Breathe out negative energy and just let that whole body give to the mat. Either watching that breath, maybe counting those breaths, but not trying too hard to concentrate. Just switching off slightly. Enjoying these next few moments of relaxation. Maybe thinking of the colour red as a ball of light. As you breathe in, that light expands, warms the pelvis, warms that lower back. And as you breathe out, that red light disperses and everything relaxes to the earth. If you wish to take a few more moments in relaxation, feel free to pause. But when you come out, make small movements, slowly making your way to seated. Have peace in your thoughts, have peace in your words, have peace in your hearts. From my heart to yours, Namaste.